So I just got a brand new tank and they sold me this. What do I do with it? We'll talk about that. Hi guys, Salty Alley here. Welcome to another episode of Ocean State Aquatics TV, and today we are talking water changes. And if you're an old school and you've been doing this a long time, you probably don't have to watch this, but if you're new and you just got a tank and you're not really sure how the heck do I do a water change? What does that even mean? What is this thing? That's what we're going to talk about today. So let's dive in. So if you're new here and you're new to the aquarium hobby, you might be wondering when you hear the words water change, do I have to drain this whole tank, take all the fish out, take all the decorations out every single time, once a week? The good news is no. So actually that's way too much cleaning. You can actually clean your tank too much. When we say do a water change, we're only talking about 20 to 50% of the water. So when you add fish into the aquarium, when they respirate, when they breathe, they produce ammonia out of their gills, just like we produce CO2 out of our lungs. And also, they release a lot of ammonia when they go to the bathroom and create waste. So the beneficial bacteria colonies that you may have heard of when you first bought your tank consume a lot of this waste and ammonia and break it down to nitrite and then further break it down to nitrate. Nitrate is the final byproduct of the nitrogen cycle, and nitrate builds up and builds up and builds up in an aquarium because it really doesn't go anywhere. Very rarely some tanks have one very specific bacteria that does actually consume nitrate, but a lot of tanks don't. So that means we have to manually remove it ourselves. So by taking out just some of the water every week, we are lowering those nitrate levels and keeping them low. Nitrates can be toxic to fish in high numbers, and fish can actually succumb to nitrate poisoning, and it can also stunt their growth as well, as nitrate is a growth inhibitor. So we always want to make sure that we're keeping the tank clean and nitrate levels low so that our fish will live long, healthy, happy lives. What do I do with this thing, and how does this come in handy? Well, this is called a siphon tube, specifically Python. The way we use this one here is not the one with the pump, but we do sell one with a little squeeze pump. That one's very simple to use. So what we're gonna do is we put this, you wanna make sure this entire plastic tube is fully submerged. I usually go up to there. And then if you have the one with the pump tube, you would just squeeze this a couple times into a bucket and it will start siphoning on its own. But if you have one that doesn't, like I hear, there's a couple ways to do it. So this is the best, most effective way, is you want to make sure this is into a bucket. You could use a 5-gallon bucket. I'm just using a Brute because I do a lot of water changes. But at home, you're probably just going to use a 5-gallon bucket unless you have a big, big tank. So we take this and we point it upwards like this. So this is totally filled with water. You don't want any air in there. Then we raise it up like this. You see the water level go down and then quickly go back under. And there you go. There's a siphon going. So that's very simple. A couple other ways to do this as well, which I find to be a little more complicated, but can be done. So if you place the whole tube and you fill the whole thing with water, so all the air comes out, and then you plug this hole here and you put it down like that, that will start the siphon as well. But it's a little more complicated. The first way works just as well. So now we'll talk about how exactly do I clean my substrate, because this is very important. When you're doing a water change, you're not just draining water. You actually want to make sure that you're removing all of this waste that's built up on the bottom, because that is what is creating the nitrates. As that waste builds up, your nitrate levels are going to keep getting higher and higher, so we want to remove all of that. If you're just draining water, it will help. It will lower the nitrate levels for a little while, but if you keep letting the waste build up, it's just going to continue to be a problem, and you'll get a lot of buildup of detritus, which is just a fancy word for fish poop. So if you have sand, which is a very common question that we get a lot, it's a little bit different, this whole process, because this is, you may have heard, called a gravel vacuum, but you can still use it on sand. So we'll get it started again. So I always have one hand, I usually have my less dominant hand, my left hand, on this tube, and I just kind of hold it like this, and I go into the sand and I pinch. So here I'm pinching, not all of the way, and you can see that the waste, I don't know if you can see it in there, but the waste is going up and the sand falls back down. So the reason we're pinching is because if I don't, I'll show you, the sand just goes whoop all the way in the tube. And we don't want that because we don't want to take our sand out. We want to leave that in there. So we just pinch it, lightly, so I'm still letting water through, but not a lot, so that slows it down. The waste is light enough to still get sucked up, but the sand will fall back down. So we just keep going, I kind of go every every inch or so all the way around the aquarium. Now you don't have to remove all of your decorations, you don't have to move all of your rocks. I like to just kind of go in between and get all of this here. Especially if you have an established system. For anyone who isn't new and has had a tank a while, I don't really suggest going through your old, moving all your old rocks, especially if you've never done it before, because a lot of nitrate pockets build up underneath in the sand. And if you move all of that, you release a ton of nitrate into the tank and you can actually cause a nitrate explosion. And that's not good for the fish. Like I had said prior, most fish can handle nitrates up to a certain level, but doing that, especially an older aquarium that you've never done that before, can raise the nitrate levels to a dangerous level. So we want to make sure that we just leave those. You know, you can just move along here. And with the sand too, you can also just kind of, see I'm just kind of floating above the top and it's sucking up all that waste and leaving most of the sand behind. You're gonna get some light particles that are just gonna go in regardless. And if they do, that's totally fine. You know, you're only gonna lose a very small amount of sand. So there is such thing as over cleaning your aquarium. You can actually clean too much. And this is often a common mistake made by new fish keepers. So it sounds really good to just make, you know, take everything out, scrub it down real good, make it look pretty, especially in the beginning, because you start to go through this ugly cycle where the rocks get green and fuzzy and everything just looks dirty. But you really gotta kind of just leave it alone. If you clean your tank too much, you're gonna kill a lot of that beneficial bacteria I talked about earlier. That beneficial bacteria lives on surfaces, it's not really in the water column. So, you know, if you take your sponges out, if you have sponge filters or in your hang-on back filter, there's sponges and you take those out and you rinse them in the sink, you're killing all of that really good bacteria. And this can cause new tank syndrome, or you can crash your tank, which means that you've removed all of that good bacteria that's consuming that fish waste and keeping those ammonia and nitrate levels at 0. If your rocks get algae on them, if you have just a few rocks, kind of like I have here, what I suggest is just turning them upside down. It's a nice simple hack and it works because the algae now is on the bottom and the algae will die off, and next time they start to get some algae, flip it again and it'll be clean on the other side. But algae is normal in a new tank, so you kind of just have to roll with the punches and just let it be for a while. Usually 2 to 3, even 6 months into the cycling process, you will get algae, so that is normal. So if you have a hang-on back filter or if you have a canister filter with sponges, you never want to replace those or throw those away because you will remove that beneficial bacteria, but you can actually take them out when you do a water change and rinse them in the tank water. Here I'll demonstrate with a sponge filter, but this works the same way with any type of sponge that you have in the filtration. So I take this out. I never want this to dry because I don't want to kill that bacteria. And obviously if you have sponges in your canister or your hang-on back, you don't have to take it apart, but now I just got the sponge here. So the way this works is I just dip it in that water, squeeze it out. See all that brown gunk, all that waste? So just, I'm not running this into the sink under the tap water because there's a lot of chlorine in the tap water and you could be using too hot or too cold of water, which will kill all that good bacteria. And we don't want to do that. All right, so now I've got that put back together. Boop, and that is all. And now it's nice and clean. All right, guys, so that is it today for talking about how to clean our aquarium and how to use this fancy dancy thing. If you guys have any questions or if you ever need any help, feel free to come on and visit us at any of our 3 locations or give us a call on the phone, and we'd be always happy to help and to show you and demonstrate in person exactly how to do a water change. Thank you guys so much for watching another episode of Ocean State Aquatics TV, and thanks for joining me, Salty Alley, doing some water changes, and keep it fresh, baby.